Hi, this is Kara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge or, in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people,
which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you, and we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Kara Riska, life coach, wife, and the mother of 4 incredible and unique kids. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I completely lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and grace that once felt so completely lacking. I started the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves up against what feels impossible. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle the dreams that you hold impossible now. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you're a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Well, hello there, and welcome back to the Special Needs Mom podcast. You probably heard it in the intro, but my name's Kara. I'm a mom to 4 amazing kids, and one of my children is not like the others. And I'll get into my story a little bit more in this episode, or I'll touch on it in case you're dying with curiosity. But today I want to talk about gratitude, or even maybe the lack of gratitude that sometimes we feel. And I haven't settled on the name for this episode at the time of this recording, but things I'm toying around with are gratitude when life is really hard, or gratitude when you draw the short straw in life. And I want to go back to a story of a time in my life where I was particularly struggling with gratitude. So at this time, it was late 2011. I remember I was sitting in church actually, and because it was November 2011, we were talking about the same thing we're talking about right now, gratitude. And I remember just struggling so significantly to feel grateful. I was like, but how can I be grateful when things suck right now? When I just got totally rocked, when my son is barely put back together again. My son had just endured a craniotomy to remove a brain tumor. And while he lived, his life was radically changed. Therefore, our entire family's lives were entirely changed. So we were barely out of the hospital. My son had just learned to walk again with an entirely different body. I was pregnant, expecting a baby in April, thinking, how the heck am I going to do this new life with this 2-year-old baby that just learned to walk again for the second time? And I'm not sure if he can see or not. And oh yeah, he has this major hormonal condition now where everything's on manual drive. And if you screw things up, it could be the end. I mean, maybe I'm not dramatizing it much. Like, that is the condition, is that if his medications aren't quite right, then his life is in critical condition. We were financially freaked out because we went from having 2 income earners to having my husband have a new business that was not yet income earning, and me, who was just laid off from my part-time job. So we were freaked out. And of course, with the financial impact of having a major health crisis, that was just like compiling the situation. I was having this life at home that I wasn't expecting and I didn't want. Things were really hard. And then I would hear about gratitude. And that just didn't feel right. I was like, how can I be grateful? Like, this is not going well. I am not grateful. Yet I couldn't deny the goodness in my life. There were certain things that I couldn't find peace with, this not being grateful place, because I was looking back at the way people showed up, the fact that my son was alive, that he did survive, and that we had access to the medical facilities that we did, the doctors, like all the things. Like, there was like all these things I couldn't deny were good. People that showed up from high school, gosh, maybe even middle school, from college, from church. Like, people showed up, and I couldn't deny that. I couldn't deny the checks that came in the mail and literally helped us through. And so I didn't feel right not being grateful either. And it just was like, I don't know, like, this is not making sense in my brain. And then I realized, and actually it was through the message that I was receiving in this particular church service, that this is not an all or nothing game. It's not we're either all grateful or all ungrateful, but it was actually allowing the things that were really hard in my life just to really be hard and suck. Like, be really bad and be like, this is the worst. I want out, and I'm not thankful for this. It's allowing that, but then it's also allowing acknowledgement of what is good, of what I am thankful for. And I think for me, like, separating these two things out, like having them now be able to coexist, which does allow our mind, or it asks our mind to go to a little bit of a place of cognitive dissonance where like the goodness doesn't have to make sense with the badness. They can both coexist, but they don't have to commingle, if you will. Because life is always going to have these bumps. And the way that I was operating was I was allowing my thinking to lead me to believe that in order to be grateful or thankful, that everything in my life had to be good. But it's never all good. So therefore, it was a losing proposition at that point. Life, we know this. Life always has bumps. People get cancer, maybe so in our case, we were getting better, but it didn't mean that. Actually, at that time, I look back and one of my friend's mom was re-diagnosed for I think the third or maybe fourth time with breast cancer. Another friend was just experiencing a lot of struggle through her house. Another really close friend was separated from her husband because of an alcohol addiction. Another friend was struggling with some really hard to grapple with family differences. Meanwhile, parenting a newborn. And so I looked actually this picture of all these really close friends and I kind of recognizing, okay, like this is life. This stuff's not going away. Like it's going to be here. Like there's not going to be a point. I really do. I don't know. Do you guys do this? I really, a lot of my life lived like we're going to just get to this place and it's going to be all good. And like, I think I was trying to get to that place. It wasn't working, clearly. And so recognizing like, okay, especially with this picture of these close friends of mine, that this was life. This is what we're constantly going to be getting into being with. And in those moments, we can allow all the sadness, the hurt, the pain, the struggle, the fear, and we can actively create gratitude. So let's look a little bit. Let's glance over at science. We won't be heavy science here. I'm sure this is not news to any of you, but science supports that actually, and specifically, there's a Harvard Health Publishing article that I'll reference, and it really just states that gratitude is strongly and consistently associated with greater happiness. Gratitude helps people feel more positive emotions, relish good experiences, improve health, deal with adversity, and build strong relationships. Again, I don't think this is new information, but I do think it's important to actually recognize that study after study after study after study shows that there's something to this whole gratitude thing. I like to also point out that gratitude is a feeling, not a circumstance. And I think if we look back at the story I shared with you about kind of this way I was relating to gratitude was that I would be in a circumstance that was all good, and then I could feel grateful. That's not how it works. Gratitude is the feeling, the experience we get when we relate to any given circumstance with a being of appreciation, gratitude, and then we experience those positive emotions. And so this is really good news because what this means is that no matter what the circumstance is, no matter if we look at it and we automatically think bad or good, or maybe we're a little bit indifferent, it means that we have the power to look at it in a way that actually cultivates the feeling of gratitude. So I think that's really good news. It makes me feel like there's always a way. And it doesn't necessarily mean we always have to choose that way. We might not always want to feel grateful. And I'll get to that a little bit more later. I also like definitions. So I'm going to give you guys a couple definitions that I think are helpful when just thinking about this topic. Gratitude, defined, is the state of being grateful. Thankfulness. Now let's look up thankfulness. Thankfulness is appreciation of benefits received. Expressing gratitude. Grateful thanks. Affording pleasure or contentment, and is pleasing by reason of comfort supplied or discomfort alleviated. I like that one. But I think the one that most hit me was the appreciation of benefits received. That this helped me think about how in many circumstances we can look at what we might have received as a benefit. It doesn't mean we always have to, but it does mean that we have the ability to look at something and to actively create and cultivate the feeling of gratitude by appreciating what we've received, specifically benefits, or like that last definition, or of a discomfort alleviated. Let's look at 3 specific ways or practices that we can implement to feel more grateful. And I'll say also to feel more better. The first one relates to kind of changing this all or nothing thinking. It's what I like to say is a both and. The first one is let there be both consciously. And when I say both, I mean both good and bad. Choose to be 100% grateful for the good. Maybe a tangible way to look at this would be choose a circumstance in your life, any circumstance, and maybe even one that you're not immediately grateful for. That at first glance, you're like, how, Kara, could I ever be grateful for this? And I want you just to identify and lean into like how much it sucks. And just kind of allow that to be. Why is this thing not something you would choose to have in your life? Kind of go into like complaining about it for a little bit. And I actually just want you to allow that to just stay there, just to be. The point is actually we don't necessarily have to make that better to create both. We're not trying to cancel out the bad with the good. We're trying to create, remember, room for both. Now I want you to check in on that circumstance, and I want you just to check and see. Take a little peek and see if there is something you want to be grateful for about that specific circumstance. And the key here is I don't want you to have to find something that you're grateful for that circumstance. I give you permission just to let that circumstance suck and not to have to, what is the word I'm looking for? And not have to revolutionize it. But I do want you to check and see. Okay, so either you can find something you want to be grateful for, and I want you to lean all the way in and just be grateful for that thing. And if you decided you don't want to be grateful for anything related to that circumstance, I want you to find something else. Maybe it's totally unrelated. Maybe the thing in your life the circumstance you brought was distance learning. Let's go with that. And right now it's not easy. Let's just say you decided you don't want to be thankful for anything related to distance learning. I want you to find something else. Maybe a new pair of shoes that you want to be grateful for. You say, yeah, that's so unrelated. And just be grateful for that. And lean all the way in and practice saying, I appreciate the benefits received of these shoes. I'm going to look so stinking cute. Or I will be so stinking comfortable as I run or walk or hike or sit on my couch. I don't know. Do you see how we can create room for both, but it's not trying to cancel out or get over the bad in our life? Okay, let's move on to number 2. Bring it close and bring it small. A lot of times when we're trying to be grateful, it's like we're going to be grateful for big and grand things in our life. And this has things feel far away and far off, and it doesn't actually have the impact to our life like today that we're looking for. So I want you to bring them close and bring them small. So that looks like saying something like, this is the saying that I want you to consider. Today, I am grateful for ... And you decide something that you're grateful for. So maybe you're getting ready in the day and you're going to ask yourself this question. Like maybe you say, today, I'm grateful that I have hair. I don't know. It doesn't have to be anything big. It can be so simple. Like you have hair. Maybe you know people right now that don't have hair due to different treatments, right? And just to be thankful that you have hair. Or bring it even closer. Today and in this moment, I'm grateful for. And this one can be really powerful if you're struggling with things like worrying about the future. Maybe it's worrying about health in the future. Maybe it's worrying about seeing relatives in the future, since, we have this season coming up. Maybe it's worrying about, did I already say financial stuff in the future? And so when you bring it so close to today and in this moment, it allows you just to be 100% grateful now and experience the benefit of feeling that energy, of feeling that thankfulness. Because you're already deciding, you don't have to worry about like even later today. Just today and in this moment, I am grateful for. The last one is express it. So an exercise you might consider is writing a letter or a note expressing gratitude. And if possible, this is extra credit because of COVID, it might be more difficult to deliver in person. And so the act of Like, I mean, this hits on so many levels, right? Like, we feel good when we give the gift of acknowledgement to other people. Like, it's a gift that gives to them, but it also gives to us. Maybe even gives us more than it gives them. It depends. So this can be a teacher from the past. This can be a doctor that's really special in your life. This could be a teacher. This can be your spouse. This can be parent. It can be obviously anybody. You guys probably can think of somebody that you're really grateful for, and maybe you haven't expressed it. Maybe you haven't told them recently how they've impacted your life and that you're so grateful for it. As I'm talking about this, actually, I think about somebody who came into my life at such a critical time. Her name is Beth Thorpe. Beth and her husband, Brad. And they have an organization called the Mitchell Thorpe Foundation. And Mitchell Thorpe is their son. And gosh, I'm getting so emotional because these two people lost their son to an undiagnosed illness. So, ouch. And they turned around and created this organization that supports families with children with diagnoses, diseases, and disabilities. And they come meet them financially, spiritually, and obviously emotionally. And we came upon them in a January. Literally, I added like an art fair where I was like looking at the booth as my son was like drawing something at like one of the tables. And I looked at the sign and I read it. And I've never had this experience, but I read it. It was like a foundation, like, hey, this is for you. And I read it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like that is exactly me. And so I couldn't help but reach out. I was like, I need their help. Like, there's no question. I need their help. And they came alongside us and helped us raise, I think that year was $9,000 to be able to meet our deductible, which was going to all be due in January. And again, remember the no job thing, the no job and the financial freaked out. Anyhow, it was such amazing time. So actually my commitment is I'm going to write a letter to Beth and Brad. And I have expressed gratitude to them, but we've grown a little bit less connected to the organization as we've moved on in years. And I know how much they give and they're incredible. So I'm going to write a letter to Beth and Brad. Okay. So there's one last thing for extra credit. I felt like, okay. So remember, I only said there's 3 things, but there's actually 4. And this one, I want to preface it that even as I didn't want to put it on my list because I was a little bit like, oh gosh, like more to do. And again, this is not going to probably be a surprise for anybody, but gratitude journal, right? Okay. So I'm sure you've heard of the idea of keeping a gratitude journal. And I guess the laughter and the hesitation about it is because I feel like a lot of times for me even, I mean, I do a lot of work every day on myself in the sense of like doing journaling, praying, some forms of meditation, and I'm hesitant to adding one more thing to my routine from a place of have to and should. That's the critical piece here. I don't want you to take this and be like, well, I have to do this or I have to do one more thing. I want you to look at it and say, hey, am I struggling with gratitude? Like, is this something that's been feeling really far off? And how do I see that I can simply, easily, lightfully, I don't think that's a word, but it seemed very appropriate, take on this little practice to experiment and play with gratitude. And so maybe it's a journal. Maybe it's a freaking piece of paper that you put by your bed and you just write one thing before you go to bed. Maybe you just check the box that you thought about it. I don't know. Like, honestly, do you see how I'm like, let's make this easy and not hard, but actually touch on the spirit that we're creating in being grateful. Maybe just decide to do this for like 5 days. This episode is going to be releasing the week prior to Thanksgiving, 1 week exactly prior to Thanksgiving. And I've designed it so that you can bring a little intentionality to Thanksgiving week. In fact, I've created a resource for you to implement the points that I've talked about on this very podcast. It's a simple printable guide for you to take this episode and to apply it. Because it's great to listen to it, but if you don't actually make any shifts, you're not going to experience what's possible for you. All you have to do is go to the show notes of this episode, and you're going to see a link. You'll just click on the link, you'll enter your email, and I'll email it right over to you. I think you're going to really love it. It's going to be a fresh take and something that I know it's going to help you. It's not the big things that we do. It's actually the really small things that we do that make the hugest difference. And so we have a week before Thanksgiving, and I want you just to take this one small action of getting this resource, and I want you to print it out, and then I want you to do it. It's so easy. I promise it'll be fun, and I promise that you're going to experience a greater extent of gratitude and happiness as a result of it. We'll see you next week, and happy Thanksgiving. One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes, get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.